Let's look at the idea of making our own custom blocks. Our learning intention is to begin using more efficient coding concepts. Our success criteria will be able to replace sections of code with my very own custom blocks. As a coding concept, in Scratch 2, we can make our own custom code blocks. Basically, you get one block and you put lots of blocks inside that one block. Custom code blocks are purple. In other programming languages, these are called functions or subroutines, and they are very, very useful, and you can't really become an advanced programmer without them. To begin with, we're going to replicate the code that appears on the blocks on the next slide. You need to remember that your GPIO pins are not necessarily the same as mine, so you'll need to change the numbers accordingly. We're going to replicate this code. Here it is in the PowerPoint slide. I'm now going to move across to our program on the MR5 to be able to do this. So here we are in Scratch 2 on the Raspberry Pi, which is running MR502 this time. Basically, if I press play on this, you can see now. So I press over here and press on the click button. You'll see on the robot, it will basically move a very short amount forward. It'll stop for a short period of time. It'll turn. It'll stop for a short period of time. It's fairly obvious. You can see it in my comments here. These are good use of comments, but this code is terribly inefficient. For starters, we've written the same stop code or the same stop idea twice. We've actually had to stop the code twice. And then we've stopped it a third time down here with our emergency brake. So we can use the more blocks function to be able to make our own block to replace that stop function. If we think about this, if I go make a block and I call it stop space motors and go OK, I now have this purple block up here where I get to define what goes into stop motors. You can also see that stop motors has appeared over here. What I can simply do is drag this guy in here, and that will basically stop all of the motors. It doesn't matter which motors are going, it'll stop all of them. So when I need to do my emergency brake now, all I need to do is drag this particular block here, which is stop motors. I don't even need a comment because I called it stop motors. It's fairly obvious what I'm doing. I can also replace it here as well because that's going to basically stop the motors too. So let's actually just drag that away and put a stop motors in here. Similarly, this section here, pull that down. No, need to pull it further. I'm going to pull it all the way down here. I'm going to pull these guys off. And I'm going to put the stop motors in here. You can now see that my code takes up less space, but it's also more obvious what I'm doing. I'm stopping motors here and I'm stopping motors here. If you think about it, I can also do driving forward. Let's create a new block, make a block. Drive forward. Now I'm going to call this drive forward CTS. And CTS stands for continuous. Because what I'm actually going to do is just turn the motors on to drive forward continuous. So now I can basically just drag these two guys here into here, pull this one off back over here, and I'm going to turn the motors on to drive forward continuous. You can see there that that's very useful. Now that if I actually run that, it does the same thing again. The robot just moves that little bit. So you can see there that I've got this drive forward continuous. So it basically, when I run the drive forward continuous, it's just going to run all the time. So if I actually pull that off there, and I might push the robot away, my hands. If I run that now, it's just going to drive forward until I press the space bar, which is my emergency brake, which will stop it all. Let's think about the turn now. I could just create the same type of turn, but there is a different way I can do the turn, which is probably more effective. Let's go make block. And I'm going to just call this turn because I don't really know which way it's going to turn. I could call it turn left or turn right and figure it out. But I'm just going to call it turn, and I'm going to call it time. So it's going to turn for a period of time. I'm going to click on the options here, and I'm going to add a number input. And that number input is going to be called time. So it's going to turn for a period of time. To pull down here so I can go OK. So now I've got this one here called define turn time time. I can actually then pull these guys in here like so. And the interesting thing about this is, rather than actually having this turn here with 0.25 seconds, I can drag the word time from there into there, and it will now see that as being the time. So basically, pushing my robot back over now so you can see this, if I pull turn time out 1, turn time is going to turn it for a period of 1 second. Let's actually just change that back to 0.5 seconds, and then press the, I'll move this up, press that flag. You can see that it turned for a period of seconds, and it didn't need the wait at the end because the wait is here. So now I can basically turn it for 5 seconds, 0.5 seconds, I can turn it for 1 second. I can sit there and play around with those numbers rather than actually having to figure out what it is in the code. I can see that it's going to turn for that period of time. In order to complete this activity for a satisfactory level, you're going to make blocks for all the types of motion that you need: forwards, backwards, left and right. Also a stop. You need to make blocks to turn lights on and off. You can turn them all on at once and all off at once, or you can turn the front ones on and off, and the back ones on and off, or you can use them as indicators when you're turning left and right. You need to make extra blocks for all types of motion to run for a set period of time if you want to score commendable. And if you want exceptional, you need to make a block that will make the robot drive a path of any polygon in a range of 3 to 8 straight sides, with each side taking from 1 to 5 seconds to complete. What that means is you need a block, and you need to be able to type in the number of sides and how long it's going to drive along the edge of each side into the purple block, and then it'll just do it once you actually have that in the code. So it should be able to figure all of that out from basically those two numbers being put into the robot.